Syringes, check. Bandages, check. Dr. Mundo, check.
Push, push, push. Dr. Mundo pushed himself to the forefront of a lot of debate and is becoming an increasing problem in League recently, or at least people think so. Despite not getting any buffs, he started becoming super popular earlier this year for various reasons. Two key players that kickstarted this were obviously Aloys in the top lane and Natty Nat in the jungle. Hell, the champion was so fun, even I played it when I was doing my unranked to master in the jungle. I was just copying the Natty's playstyle. And yeah, congrats on the rank 1, buddy. In those early stages was a fun niche pick that produced a lot of goofy clips. In these clips, he really felt unkillable. After that came mass adoption, during which Mundo pick rate surged, until inevitable nerfs, to which he seems immune now. So why is that? Why is this champion unnerfable, and why does he go where he pleases?
Labels say, VelKoz, torn clothes, mood swigs, purpleness. Me watch for that.
In this video, we will examine why even after some nerfs he's considered to be the best champion in the game, despite having terrible stats. He even got to the point where he's the highest win rate champion during Worlds. Owner picked it in Game 5 for the first time since 2018. Like, what? T1 was literally explaining his abilities during the draft to Owner while they were fighting for their final chance to stay in the Worlds, which they proceeded to win, partially due to Mundo, and then won their third Worlds in a row.
T1 pushing forward. They've made their way on the Nexus. AL scramble to defend. Dora can't do it. History is written by the victors.
When I got coached by Broxa in the jungle, he wasn't even too fun of the pick. A lot of people in high-elo community think he's kind of trash. He has a bunch of losing matchups. Nobody likes playing him. He's a weak lane phase. His stats are beyond atrocious, and it gets even worse the higher elo you check. So what is it with Mundo that makes him unique from the design perspective, that makes this problem kind of unsolvable in the eyes of the people?
Oh no! Mundo fix. All good. Stonks go up.
Let's dissect his key features, and the problem will be very obvious shortly as these features start to compound over time. He's an HP stacking tank. Most tanks get resistances and tend to get outscaled by AD carries and mages at around the 4th item when they start figuring out how to go and breach through those resistances. Mundo is a little bit different. His problems don't necessarily get addressed by the items because there's way more solutions to magic resistance and armor tanks through the itemization. Whereas a lot of the solutions for Mundo are built in the champions themselves. Think of Fiora and Vayne, and as such aren't really helpful once you're in the game. Okay, so that's the point 1. Remember this. HP stack it. You'll see the other 2 key points and it's all gonna kick in. Since he's not a CC tank, he doesn't really initiate. He has to have damage, otherwise he's gonna be useless. We got Riot devs literally confirming this to us. This makes sense as nobody will play a tank without any meaningful impact. Even tanks with CC still do a lot of decent damage. Picture Zac, picture Sejuani, Malphite. They will still dish out a heavy chunk even though their primary goal is to initiate. So using this logic, Mundo has to scale better than them in order to be playable. His damage depends on his HP stacking. This is the key point number 2. This is very, very important as it creates a feedback loop. The more HP he has, the more damage he does. The more damage he does, the more threatening he becomes to the other people, which means they have less time to DPS him and have way worse position to do so. These two synergize very, very well and break a lot of games. But there's a big kicker, which is the third aspect of him. He has a ton of healing, which, you guessed it, depends on his max HP. So now this is the third effect that we've added onto the feedback loop, and at this point it becomes really deadly. You can see the problem.
Wait, I'm alive. I'm tanked 5 people, bros. No, right. Don't
Healing in and of itself is a bit of a broken mechanic, as I've already explained in one of my shorts before, because it's in and of itself a feeding loop. Because the more healing capability you have, the more time you have to heal yourself. So for example, if you have like Soraka and heal yourself, you will buy yourself more time with that temp HP until another rotation of heal comes on. So if you're a healing champion, it really benefits you to stack even more healing. Healing reduction items are kind of impossible to balance, because if you reduce too much healing, you negate a lot of healing champs. You basically make them useless. But if you reduce too little, it becomes a runaway effect where people just heal and are unkillable anyway. So now you can see how all of these 3 key features of the character combine themselves. And here's a little bit of fun math that I've done just to show you how Mundo operates in this case. So if we imagine that enemies have a flat decent amount, like 500 DPS, and you have 4000 HP, you're healing over 3 seconds is 0. So you will die in flat 8 seconds. Now, if you pump the healing up a little bit, you have 250 healing over 3 seconds. You've merely extended your lifespan by 1.6 seconds. So with the exact same numbers, you will be dead in 9.6 seconds. Okay, here's where it gets really, really fun and the math kicks in. The more healing you add, let's say you get to the 500 healing with another 250. Okay, now you're dead in 12 seconds. You've bought yourself a decent amount of time. Add another 250, 16 seconds. Another 250, 24. Another 250, and now it's 48. And it starts going to absurd numbers because the closer you get to parity of the damage dealt, the closer you get to immortality. Initially, adding 125 healing won't even extend your lifespan by a mere second. But later on, if you have a decent bit of healing, if you add just 125 healing over 3 seconds, you can expand your lifespan from 48 seconds to 96 seconds. And then further to immortality after that. So the ratio of the healing versus damage dealt is very, very important to understand. This is what we call a positive feedback loop. Now you can see how this initial healing becomes meaningless and eventually becomes so much bigger. And this is a very, very simple example of healing adding value to healing without changing any other parameters. Now in the Mundo case we've laid out throughout this video, you can notice that the healing is dependent on his max HP, but also his damage is dependent on his max HP. So in this formula, the X, or max HP, would go up, and along with it, you'd get even more healing, and along with it, you take less DPS because you do more damage and therefore more threatening to the enemies. Because if you see Mundo barreling down towards you with 6k health, and he's full HP, and you know you will not be able to burst him, you're turning around. And so is every other of your teammates. Now, his curve becomes extremely apparent to everybody. It's all about the thresholds. If you can break through his defenses, it becomes less than useless. Whereas if he survives with even just a sliver of HP, he will completely stomp you, giving the impression of immortality. This explains his paradoxical, atrocious win rate and the optics of being the best champion in the game. Champions like Mundo are just very difficult to handle perception-wise. They produce moments where they feel uncounterplayable entirely, which is kind of true for that moment, but you had plenty of chances to punish beforehand. He's very, very similar in that way to, let's say, Kassadin, Aurelion Sol, or Kale. The weaknesses are well defined, but if you miss the opportunity to punish, eventually no amount of counter itemization is going to help you when Kassadin is level 18 dominating you. Even in the World's Finals, the Game 3, T1 versus KT, Mundo looked absolutely unkillable. But there were plenty of chances for T1 to pull ahead beforehand and solve the issue. Not to mention that they went super, super greedy on the draft, with the Victor and Viego being picked on the B4 and B5, which are champions that rely on reset mechanic, which requires you to burst through the first target. So it's a very snowbally comp. If you can burst the first target, it's free, but if you can't, and then you end up in a problem and the fight is untenable. By the way, VelKoz B4 would have broken the game, made it completely free, but Faker didn't have the confidence to give me that T1 VelKoz skin, unfortunately. So yeah, T1 knew what was going to happen. They knew exactly what was going to happen. It's just very, very surprising for the audiences when they see the Mundo go like with full HP at the end of the team fight, ending with more health than what we started with. And then they will look at that and say like, oh, there's no solution. See, even Faker can't deal with the Mundo. So let's summarize to really, really simplify here. TLDR, the Mundo problem from the design perspective is that he's one big positive feedback loop which rests on a singular stat, which when he kicks off into the 6th gear, he's entirely unstoppable and optically problematic. The clips he produces can be super crazy, and it can be very frustrating to play against, because you feel like you have no options, which is partially true because most of his counterplay happens in the draft and during the early stages of the game. Items really don't address this issue because it's not an arena. There's really not that many items you can do to counterplay a super HP stacking tank. Even stuff like Bork, you would imagine it works really well in this case. It doesn't really, because Bork is on current HP. It works well when Mundo wants it to go well, when he's full HP, but the lower HP he is, the less damage you do, and then he heals a lot at that point, so he's just baiting you that he's gonna die, but he never does. A lot of items really don't do much here. So keep this in mind when evaluating what kind of a champion Mundo is, when you look at his gameplay in the future. So if Riot were to change him again, I think they would go with a more placebo effect change, something that would tackle the champion optically, which would probably shuffle some more power to his early game, making him a bit more consistent while reducing his later on payoff of unkillability. Just for the optics of it, it would basically be the same champ, just to promote his consistency in a way and to make it less unkillable later on, so people would think of him less. Because the alternative of just flat out nerfing the character when he has these stats and he's this inconsistent would just mean that he would never be picked ever again. Hope you enjoyed this champion breakdown. If you want to see more of these, give me some good good comments, good ideas of what we could do next. I like diving deep and like doing some math behind the characters, figuring out what is exactly that makes them broken. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one. Peace.